At WSB, we support the needs of each community's infrastructure, the places, spaces, and systems that support our lives. We're a forward-thinking design and consulting firm specializing in engineering, community planning, environmental, and construction services. The future is what we make of it, and we take pride in partnering with communities to build what's next in infrastructure. We look forward to building a relationship with your community. Forge ahead with WSB.
From the League of Minnesota Cities, this is City Speak. I'm Luke Fisher, Executive Director and host of this season of the show. This season, we are having honest and open conversations with city leaders discussing the journey to leadership and the moments that help define big career leaps, either new roles, new projects, or big moments. I'm joined today by a good friend and colleague of mine, Laurie Hokkanen. She's the city manager in the city of Chanhassen. Welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Luke. I've enjoyed listening to your other guests.
So you are the city manager in Chanhassen, but your career in local government is more than just Carver County. Can you tell us a little bit about where you've worked and some of your professional experiences?
I started my career in Illinois.
Okay.
I worked for the city of DeKalb, and then I came to Chanhassen to be the assistant city manager.
All right.
Stayed in Carver County to be the city manager in Victoria.
Wonderful.
Ventured over to Hennepin County to follow you as the administrative services director in Plymouth. Mm-hmm. And then in 2021 came back to Chanhassen to be the city manager.
That's fantastic. So how long were you in Chanhassen your first time around as the assistant city manager?
Almost 9 years.
9 years. Mm-hmm. And then you were in Victoria for how long?
A little over 3.
Okay. And tell me about Plymouth. How long?
A little over 3 as well.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. And you've been in Chan for?
Almost 3.
So you've bounced a little bit between assistant city manager and city manager and assistant and city manager again. Yeah. Tell me about how you've thought about that. That's maybe not completely conventional, but more and more people are trying a second chair and a first chair and seeing which one fits them best.
Yeah, that's a good question because I think the roles are different. Mm-hmm. And if there are people contemplating, they should think about what those differences are and how they like to work. Mm-hmm. Particularly when I left Chanhassen to go to Victoria, I knew that I wanted to be a city manager. Yeah. It was nice because I kept so many relationships in place, still working with the same school districts, the same county.
Oh, sure.
But when I chose to go to Plymouth, contemplating now going back into that second chair role, Plymouth, a lot of people don't recognize, is the 7th largest city in the state. There are 380 full-time employees. And I knew that I wanted the opportunity to work in a larger organization. In Victoria, at the time that I was there, we had, I think, 32 full-time employees.
Wow. So it's like 10 times bigger from a staff perspective.
Totally, yes. Yep. So Victoria, you want to implement a change, you can literally meet one-on-one with every staff member and walk through it. You're not going to be able to do that in a place like Plymouth. Yeah. And so just to be able to understand how that is different, how you scale change was something that was really exciting.
And so one of the things you mentioned was thinking about the differences between the two chairs. And what is the most stark, maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that you've thought about as you've approached those transitions in your career?
I think the biggest thing is the difference between formal leadership and informal leadership. When you're in the number 1 chair, you can call together your leadership team and take as much feedback as you want and really dialogue and brainstorm. But at the end of the day, you go home at night and you can make a decision. Yeah. When you were in a department head role or that number 2 role, you are now part of the group that is navigating how to use your influence, how to have that feedback feed to the city manager, but you are not the one who's making the decision at the end of the day. And I think it is a big difference when you've had the opportunity to do both.
Making my own transition from being a deputy here to being the executive director, I used to be the head peanut in the gallery, and now
I love that.
Now I've got a different weight of responsibility on me that feels different, right?
Absolutely. The other thing is what people tell you changes.
Oh my goodness.
So when you're the lead peanut, you hear a lot more, and I
Yeah.
think a lot more unfiltered. And so when you are the city manager or the executive director,
Yeah.
I think you have to keep in mind that you're not getting the same information that you used to.
Yeah. So how does it feel for you to know that there are other conversations that are happening that you're intimately aware of? Maybe not the details, but just that conversation that's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe that text thread that you're not part of anymore. Like, how do you reconcile that? What do you think about that? Or do you just like put on like a blinding coat of self-assurance and say, this is going to be fine?
A little bit of that.
Okay.
I think there's a small bit that's jealous and that misses that former dynamic.
Yeah.
There's the rational part that recognizes that when you're the boss, sometimes you don't get to be on every
Yeah.
text thread.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you hope that you have a good enough relationship that you're not missing important things.
Right. You were the assistant city manager in Chanhassen, and then you left for a little while, but you came back as the city manager. And people knew you from 6 years prior. You go and live new experiences. You sit in a top chair, you work in the 7th largest city in the state, and then you come back. And do people expect Laurie as the former assistant city manager, or are they looking for Laurie, this really great leader who has all these other experiences since I knew her before?
In my case, I had kept in touch with, or people had kept up with the things going on in my career and work life. And in Victoria, some pretty noteworthy conflicts had occurred. So people had definitely tuned into a few council meetings.
Sure.
And in my time in Plymouth, we kicked off some really large projects, like a $55 million community center project. And so I really benefited by the fact that people had kept up with me or my work a little bit. When I came back, I think they really were looking forward to that combination of who they knew me as before and the things that I had learned and experienced since then.
So was it helpful, do you think, that you had some context, some prior experiences in the organization? How did you balance those where, you weren't completely blind to everything that was happening, but you had some working knowledge?
I think it was helpful. I came in after a longtime leader who had been there for more than 30 years, and then they had about a year with an interim city manager, which was a great way for the city to transition. But I think after a year with an interim city manager, it was really nice that I also didn't have to start from the beginning and get that same base of knowledge. Obviously, I had been gone for 7 years, so I did need to catch up to where things were today and not assume that they were the same as when I left. But I do think it was really helpful for the city not to have to go through the completely brand new twice in a row.
Have there been places where sort of your perspectives have been shaped by what was before, that you feel like, oh man, this is something that I know is one of those issues that I've got to get us turned on? Or have you really tried to play maybe a leveler hand and approach with not letting some of those past experiences color your perspectives today?
Yeah. I think I've tried to do both. One of the benefits of having the history is understanding things that are important to people, being able to value tradition with them because you've experienced it and you kind of have that love and fondness for it also.
Yeah.
But not letting that get in the way of that classic, this is the way we've always done things.
Yeah.
And we really have been trying to change a lot of things, a lot of processes updated.
Sure.
We have a lot of new staff that have come on, and so balancing we've always done it this way, and some people like it that way and are fond of it because, but also let's talk about how we can change and make it better.
Yeah.
So I kind of see myself as a bridge between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you approach that? Because I think a lot of organizations right now are encountering this same sort of wave of retirements that are happening all at once, where large portions of the workforce are turning over. And some of the new folks that we're hiring in have really great ideas and really interesting perspectives and maybe some things worth trying. How do you balance that with sort of that long tradition of this is how we've always done it and honor both at the same time?
I think you are highlighting a really important challenge for many of us. what I've been trying to do is, as we figure out why there might be resistance to change, what are the parts that we're reticent to let go of and why? And are they purely nostalgia, or is there something about what we're holding on to that we can replicate in a new process? And I want to echo what you said. The new people that are coming into our organization, they really do have great ideas. So it is so important to make that space.
And I don't think that there's like a perfect playbook in corporate America or in the public sector or anywhere on how to balance that the right way. As you've shown up as a leader in Chanhassen, certainly the situation has changed, some of the people have changed. How have you changed as a leader, and how are you communicating that differently within the organization?
I think I've changed as a leader, that I'm more sure of how to lead in the way I want to lead, to do things like demonstrate my core values. I've had more experiences balancing things like relationships and accountability. I just have more experience to rely on.
Have your core values changed as a leader along the way as you've had these new experiences that have maybe shaped your perspective differently?
I don't think that my core values have changed.
Okay.
I just think that I've gotten better at understanding how to implement them and how to balance them when you run up against conflicts.
What does that look like? Can you give us an example?
I place a really high value on relationships and people. And early in my career, that could be a struggle in terms of also having accountability, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
And so what I have developed, I think, is a set of skills and approaches for holding people accountable in a way that is still kind and respectful of the human involved, but that doesn't mean avoiding situations, which maybe is where I would have leaned earlier in my career. I might have erred on the side of the relationship.
So if you were to give advice to someone who is considering making a jump from city manager to assistant city manager or vice versa, what's one thing that you would tell them that they need to really pay attention to be successful and to show up as a leader in the right way in that transition?
My advice would be to really think about the situation that you're walking in to, and whether the work and the role are what are going to fulfill you. And then if you do make that move, I would say be really open and communicate what it is that you're trying to do as a leader. Why are you there? What are you trying to accomplish? What experience do you want the people to have around you? I think too often we assume that people know that, or they'll figure it out over time. And when we let people fill in the gaps, they might not fill in what we want them to. So if we were just a little bit more upfront and verbose about what we were doing, we could probably get people on board faster.
Laurie, thank you so much for making time for this conversation today. I'm going to leave with a few things in mind. Number one, this conversation has been all about leadership and about showing up as a leader in an authentic way. You talked about recognizing the difference between formal and informal leadership, that as leaders we need to bridge gaps with new people and those that have been around for a long time, and the importance of staying true to your core values to be effective as a leader over the long term, so you can leave a place and come back and still have people know who you are at your core. So those perspectives have all been really helpful. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Luke.
That's it for our show today. I want to thank you for listening to City Speak. If you have an idea for an episode, feedback, or want to get in touch, you can connect with us at podcast@lmc.org. Until next time, be well.